Welcome to Soulstrong. I'm Justin Fair, apparently also Bill Shatner for some reason. Uh, welcome to Soulstrong. I'm Justin Fair, and you're here to find strength in stories, joy in connection, and purpose in every moment. This is a space to explore what it means to find strength, but not in being headstrong, but in being soulful, heartfelt, and resonant.
Hmm.
Today, we are joined by the amazing Michael Owen, an amazing painter, muralist, artist, who is now in the world of California.
Yeah, that's right. I'm outside right now. Kind of ish. There's a roof over here, but it's kind of outside.
It's kind of outside. Hi, Michael.
Yeah, I'm feeling the nature right now.
So a lot of people ask me why are you doing a podcast? And I said I want Soulstrong to capture stories that charge you. As you know, that tends to mean, I have a bunch of art interests,
Hmm.
but I also have an amazing eclectic world, also known as a storm buzzing in my head, that rains down various flooding swaths of curiosity. Um,
Hmm.
sometimes
And
that's
flow charts and
and flowcharts.
expressions
Yeah,
and folders and categorizations
I feel
and
seen. I
outlines.
feel loved.
Yeah, outlines and
Mhm.
processes and ways of thinking and understanding and all that. Yeah.
So the big question that I want to start off with is, Michael, tell us, how do you and I overlap?
Oh, that's a great question. How do we overlap?
Yeah.
Well, I think one thing that's been consistent with us is just like um an openness.
Yeah.
I think an interest in an interest in exploring ourselves and what makes us tick and why, stuff like that. And how that relates to other people. Not just like navel gazing, but for sake of communion, for sake of connection, for sake of collaboration sometimes, relationships, whatever that, looks like and manifests as. I mean, I think you're interested in like a lot of different things and trying to figure out how they overlap, and that's something with me too. So I think that that's kind of like how we connect.
And that's really well said. Since you moved now to California, tell us a little bit about the art scene out there and how it differs from your time here in Baltimore.
So I've been out here for, wow, it's 6 months, I'd say, almost 6 months. And I came out excited to be in nature. And I think one of the things that you give away is that city life in order
Mm,
to get that. So it's been hard for me to find what the scene is like, what the community is like artistically here, because it looks different.
mm.
And I'm not used to that. So I'm also trying to like look in different places in different ways. So I'm retraining myself a lot in the process. Instead of just plugging in the same way that I might have in Baltimore, I'm having to find how to do that here.
You're getting acclimated. But it sounds like it's a new challenge, a way to reconnect, because you have to know what you offer and what other people offer around you. You said the other
Mhm.
last time we talked, you spoke about a local artist, and you got to visit their studio and see
Yeah, that's right.
this amazing world of paintings that he does. You said he's
Mhm.
older than you, so it's a different,
Right.
not just getting to know the lay of the land, it's also getting to know the types of people who you'll meet.
That's right. I'm engaging with an older creative community here. And they've been doing their practice, some of them, you know, for a really long time, like longer than I've been alive. And after that amount of practice, you just, there's a lot that you can share. And I'm excited to kind of like soak that up from a lot of these artists out here. There's a lot of other artists out here that also really enjoy nature like me. So they're outside painting. So I'm meeting a
Hmm.
lot of plain air painters. That's a big thing out here where people are like painting on site and going back and trying to paint the light and how it differs, and learn how to paint the sky.
A couple Edward Hopper books down here.
Mm,
They just make me aware of how cool it is to just go out and say, I'm just going to paint. If you
mm,
need me, I'm out. I'm out for the next 6 hours painting.
mm. Yeah. I've been bringing my sketchbook around with me. It's been
Yeah.
nice to like, yeah, I have been. The other day I went on a little hike with Jenica, and I made sure to bring my sketchbook. That's something that I'm like doing more consistently now. Instead of just like being like, all right, I'm going to go out and do my creative thing right now. It's just I'm trying to integrate it more with my life. So I got to have it on me more.
Hmm.
I'm not using it all the time or every
Yeah.
time I go out, but I need to have that opportunity to like capture it in my own way outside of a camera. Like I always got my camera on me.
Yeah, but it's the process that you have to figure out. It's not, oh, like the product maybe ends up the thing that you end up with, but you'll never make the product if you don't enjoy the process.
Mm,
So if you get used to drawing from time to time, on the regular, I think it's the smoothest and best way for any artist to stay engaged with their craft is
mm,
not to think they have to make a piece in order to be creative, but to see the world through a creative lens. And what better way to
mm,
do that than to have a sketch pad, to
mm.
always be drawing, to at the very least always be writing. I think there's a way to decode the world, and taking a photo on a camera doesn't do that. It's
Mm.
it's like a machine. A machine can record something, but only an artist, a human who can actually create uh, introspection as well as
Mm.
outwards thought. Only they can truly create something that is deemed art.
Well, I think like in those moments, like being able to capture what you're talking about is like really what makes an artist, you know? I think there's a lot of people out there that have a good eye and see really cool things, but don't take that moment to actually take that photo and capture it, and that's why they're not a photographer.
Yeah,
And a
it's
lot of the things where I'm going out and I'm talking about where I'm like hiking and bringing a sketchbook, I don't try to draw what it looks like. I'm really trying to capture the feel or how you were talking about writing, writing down a few words to capture how I'm feeling and just remembering that.
mm,
A lot of the work then I'll take into the studio and go back to the sketchbook to remember how I felt with those marks and those colors that I chose at the time and combine that with the imagery that I have in the photograph.
nice.
So
So
it's kind of like what it looks like and what it feels like together.
yeah, there's a symbiosis to that, a duality where it's not just about the thing that gets created.
Mm,
I've been playing around. I've told you about like different AI writing tools and art tools, and they can create anything. You can create cool marks on paper. You can make a beautiful, pixels can be anything, but
mm,
it's a facsimile until it's actually a creative outlet, not just a creative product. It's not art, it's decoration.
mm,
So I think
mm,
that shows me the importance of having a notepad, having a sketchbook. If you can't look back at it and decide sort of how it shifts. I remember I had a teacher when I was an undergrad named Barry. I forget his last name now. But he, led our Studio 101 class. And I had a painting, I had a drawing. And he actually said to me when I brought in the full drawing that he actually liked the sketch better.
mm,
And I think what he was recognizing was that there was a certain visceral energy that I was
mm,
able to quickly draw out that I did not transfer properly into the main piece. Instead, I was, being this emo, artsy, new kid. And I thought if I make this bigger, I thought of it as making it bigger, but in reality, I was redrawing. I was making a new piece that really had a slightly different tone than
mm,
the little thumbnail. But
Mm.
I wasn't looking back at the thumbnail as often. I wasn't saying, how do I make sure I capture this? And lots of times you can create something new and say, well, that was my first thought, but this is where I'm going now.
Yeah.
But that's not the same thing.
No, that's a great point. I
It's
mean,
not.
I just went to the Erica Badu concert. I told you about that up in San Francisco.
Oh, Badu is all right. Tell us about Erica Badu.
So, I mean, like, okay, you go to a show, right?
Yeah.
And like you go to this musical show, you're so excited about it. You wear the outfit, you get the tickets, you're going out on the date, you see the crowd. I mean, how do you put all of that before the show even starts? How do you put all of that into a piece of art? How do you capture that energy and put that into something? Then you get the show going and the performer comes out. Erica comes out. She's doing her thing. She's doing her thing. She's a performer, self-proclaimed performer. She says, I am a performer. This is what I
Mhm.
do. So she's out there doing her thing after doing it for so long, and she just crushes it. I can't tell you how beautiful and lovely and healing and professional, everything together it was. I was just moved by the experience. I had a great time there with Jenica. We really just had a really beautiful time celebrating her birthday. It was like what we wanted it to be plus more. And I come home and I wanted to make a picture about Erica Badu. How do you put
Yes.
all of that, like into a limited painting? Like
Well, there's only so
a
much you can do.
still image. Right.
Oh my gosh, Michael, I think I may have found it. Oh, this piece. I don't want to show this. This is old. This is early Justin. Oh my
Let's see
gosh,
it.
the
You got
emo.
to.
Oh my gosh, the emo. All right, sharing screen. Um, but actually, it's reminding me of another piece. So look at this emo-ness.
Yeah.
Oh, but apparently, emotional emo dude is in the throes of something blowing up behind them. I don't know what I was doing.
Mm.
What I really liked here was that look at the detail on the knuckles. I was able to figure that point out.
Ooh.
That intro class was really good. But I
Yeah.
will say, my gosh, look at all my old stuff. Uh,
Was the sketch like more rough, or what was the sketch like in
I think the
comparison?
sketch, I wish I had it. I think the sketch was so rough, but there was a certain visceralness of movement. I just want to say though, um, this was a painting that I did uh, from a night out at Town Dance Boutique back in the
Mm.
day, where I, was really captured by creating these tableaus of saying like performer on stage, but people enjoying it in the background. People, a foreground person versus midground versus background. And this was an early way of me trying to understand and contemplate what it meant to be, uh, to really enjoy composition
Yeah.
and to figure out the lighting. At the time, I didn't understand how to present death as well.
Mm.
So, like these figures in the background, the values between her versus them shouldn't be the same because even if it's as well lit, they need to be either just as 3D as she is, or if they are going to be as abstracted as they are, then the values have to um, there has to be this brightness. I'm trying to remember what the word is. So there's a detailed difference, but then also the fact is they should really feel like they're in the space and not a separate.
Mm.
Um,
Mm.
but I just love. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh, I haven't looked at this in years.
No, I see that. I mean, there's
I,
definitely some technical things, but once you learn those tricks and are aware of them, there's ways to really creatively break them. That's fun as fuck. I got the piece right here I'm working on.
yeah, tell us, show us.
Well, this is kind of, do you see this portrait right here?
Yes, I do. Wow. Yeah.
So,
So what are we looking at here?
well, this is like a third attempt at a portrait of her, actually. and it's on a cardboard box, and it's the most minimal one so far. There's some charcoal and some really watered down acrylic, some spray paint here. You can see like I sprayed over these branches and
Mm-hmm.
stems as a stencil. I'm ripping the cardboard up. All
Mm.
this is an effort to like make it feel more like that experience that I was talking about.
Well,
Obviously,
I really love the effect of this like, transcendent lighting. You know, when you I remember I've been to Erica Badu's concert myself, and there was, you know, a big emphasis on the beauty of light on the form, um, you know, making a vibe. And I feel like you found a way through using those trees, for instance, make it seem like there's this blinding light coming from her.
hmm. Wow, I really appreciate you saying that. I'm trying to make her fit into the environment, so that's really great that you
Yeah.
said that. There were
Uh,
some lighting colors that I'm bringing in here, especially you can see how it like sprays off her shoulders,
yeah.
add to that atmosphere that you're talking about and fill her into it. So, yeah, working on this. I feel like it's getting close, but I want to build it into a box so it's more of a diorama. This is a piece I'm working on too.
That notion, it reminds me, oh my gosh, you're sending me back to college. The notion of a boxed piece, of a Cornell box. What's the idea? But in this case, what's really great, as you said, as a diorama, is it seems like it's creating a scene, sort of like it makes me think about models of a set. You're creating a scene
Right.
within which someone explores.
Yeah, I feel like it's so you know like when you filter your photos before you put them online and the last thing on there is vignette. You can put the
Yeah,
vignette up. That's what I'm trying to do. So like I'm trying to really draw in the vignette with multiple techniques. So the first thing is the lighting. I'm bringing it more heavy in here with the colors. The strokes get bigger, so there's perspective. Playing with the perspective down here with the path. So everything is pulling you in like this. And then I even folded it out. So it's pulling you in through that extra dimension. I'm trying everything.
I think that this is very effective. One thing that I love about your pieces is the level of movement and energy, and the fact that you do understand composition so well. So the light, the eyes are driven like towards the center, towards the frame. That you know, the bright light above the figure, and even in the other piece, there, you know, that your eyes are there's clearly a direction to
Hmm.
where your eyes want to go, but it you know, it gives you the opportunity to explore. You want to explore the piece like you're a little man, you know, digging in and climbing and looking all around.
Yeah.
Where does the initial thought of your pieces come from? Do you start with like mark making first? Do you have an idea in mind? Can you tell me a bit about how you get started?
If I need to get in the studio and process something for myself, then I start with a lot of blank pieces on the ground, a lot of empty canvases. So I have an openness to just be.
Hmm.
If I'm working on a commission, I'm definitely going back through all the resources and notes and history and pulling books from my own library, influences that I want to bring into the work. It's much more directed. But a lot of the time, like I just want to like get in my studio and figure life out, you know, through paint. So maybe I'll have looked at some photos from the day or from the week, or maybe I'll go back into my sketchbook. But if I have the time to spread some work out, I'm gonna take a few hours in the studio. I'm gonna really open myself up. Then it's nice to have like a few empty pieces of paper on the ground to start with.
Yeah, I love that process that you have of putting multiple pieces out, multiple frames down, and sort of recategorizing, moving things back and forth. I remember
Mm.
when you were working on the logo for Unmatched
Mm.
Athlete. you sent us uh, like so many examples of your versions, and they were just sort of flowing off the page. Like I could just tell that you started in one spot and you just kept going.
Yeah.
I love that you're not bound by it because you have
Well,
this
I mean,
big.
yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, if I'm like bound by it, if I'm looking at one piece and putting intention into one thing to create things, then I can't be free to move my body, move outside of the boundaries that I've set for myself, move outside of the limitations of the materials I have. Like, I need to move my body. Like, that's a big part of why I got into murals in the first place, is because it got me outside of my head, outside of my heart, and like was able to like I was able to actually express it like a dancer, so to
Hmm.
speak. Like, have that extension of thought, that extension of expression, and move it out of me. So when I have like a few different pieces going on the ground at once, then I can like move around the space and get the music going and kind of get it out, so to speak. And a lot of times that stuff is just for that. It's just for that moment. I need to let it be for that moment. The day after, the morning after, is like back in the younger days when you wake up and you're like, holy shit, what did I do? I gotta like clean up this mess. And I love that night after in the studio these days, because it's like I know that I've given myself the freedom to like get messy,
Hmm.
and like there's going to be a lot of shit to clean up, and there's going to be some beautiful moments that I have given myself the freedom to like express and catalog. And at that moment I can like decide if I want to like keep that, what I want to do with it, if I want to move on with it, grow from it, and or share it.
Absolutely.
So, I think it all begins with just being able to be free, being able to kind of like get into a safe space and zone where I'm just able to really just put out the mark that I need to put out.
That level of creating a place that's safe and that place where that you feel like you can move around. You're not uh, bound by, oh, this is in the middle of the room. Everybody else will have to walk around this. It's nice to not be creating trip hazards, right? You know,
Yeah,
you
or even see it.
yeah.
Even
Well, you
see
have
it.
to visually even tripping. You want to know,
Yeah.
oh, let me look back on that, keep working at it,
Yeah.
versus you gotta figure out what last night's drunken
E-
stupor left behind.
Exactly. Exactly. And, like it took me a while to kind of figure out what those dimensions of the space were, like what the not just physical dimensions, but like what I needed to give myself in that space to like set myself up for success. I mean, a lot of the work that I like create in those moments gets trashed or built on, or, never seen again.
Yeah.
But I think even beyond the physical space of being safe, like, I don't know when this happened, maybe with social media, but I found myself years ago under the assumption that like whatever I create is going to be seen. Uh,
Hmm.
And that's a horrible place to create from.
Tell us more.
Like I feel like if you're concerned with the audience, if you're concerned with like putting it out and communicating to other people, then like you're I was missing out on a lot of the elemental things that I needed to process myself, my own experience. And it took more time for me to figure out how to be free from that than like how to be free physically moving around the studio and put these pages out and make art itself. Like, not the process, like the process extended more into like being free to say
Hmm.
what I needed to say,
There's a
not just paint.
voice. Yeah, you're developing your voice as well as your eye, and you're developing your hands. So if you are not able to break out of each of those silos, hands, eye, voice, you're probably only really paying attention to one versus the other. You're missing out on that beautiful trifecta. So by knowing that you're not creating, so that, this is the challenge of, I'd say, content arg, the idea of, there's a channel called Idea Channel I used to watch, and
Content art.
content arg,
Yeah, I love that.
these pirates of this notion that you have to just make something for the sake of making something. You have to, you have to market everything that you're doing. Everything is a potential thing to be seen. Well, to me, that is a very not temperate, it's a volatile, like, hot way to live your life, where you're not really grounding yourself, because instead of being able to intentionally pick and grab and then compartmentalize that away, you're always looking on the outlook for new stuff. And so I think even when people are thinking, okay, well, I've got to get these deliverables done, I have a piece that's due, or I need to always be working no matter what. Well, if your goal is always that everything has to become the final piece, I think that's a bad place to work out of, because you're not really giving yourself the freedom to throw it away. You also think it has to land. There are some times where I've found, and I'd like to hear your thoughts on this, you begin working on something and eventually you cover it all up and start over again. You have to throw things away sometimes and be willing to let them go. Not everything has to just, I think it's sort of like journaling. Sometimes you write something for the sake of writing it, and then it all gets thrown away. You take that paper, you scrunch it all up, you toss it in the trash, you burn it, you click delete. But that won't happen if you're afraid to say, look, I'm just exploring right now. I think that's the joy of a good sketchbook too, is that you can just, well, I just wanted to make this and throw it away later is an option. But if you think everything has to be done.
It can also be like future fodder. Like, even if it doesn't make sense to me right now, it might later. And that's been interesting too. Like, we were talking earlier about some of these older artists that I'm learning from here, and I went over to Neil's house, this painter, and I asked him what he was doing with a piece, and he's like, well, I showed it and I thought I was done, but I think it can be better. And it was already signed, and he had already shown it, and it could be better. And I agreed with him on all fronts, and we sat there together and talked about his painting, and he was open to kind of like hearing what I thought about it technically and emotionally, from an emotional standpoint too, and from a narrative standpoint, and like different angles, but from my view. And I left there thinking, like, this motherfucker is gonna go on and paint this finished painting that he already had a price on and showed people. That was inspiring to me to come back to my paintings here that I have, because I have some paintings in the studio that I brought out here that are like 10 years old that never sold. And I'm looking back at them and I'm like, if I'm objective about these, I showed these, I signed them, there was a price on them, and they can be better, and because I've lived life since then.
Also, the piece never found its market in that regard. Like yes, people saw it, but at the end of the day, you're still holding on to it. As long as it's in your hands, it's something you can always work on. And frankly, just because it was done doesn't mean it's still done. Like, also, artists are incredibly critical when they reach a certain level of development. So it makes complete sense that for Neil and for you that, something that someone else might think of as absolutely amazing, you might say, well, I would like to revisit this. Or there's
Mm,
one little difference that I can make to this old thing that might make it, sellable for today versus yesterday. You
mm,
know, years ago, I have pieces, I have canvases, I have things all around me where I'm like, it's no longer like, there's no mark, it has depreciated in value. I don't know what to do with this thing anymore. Um, it's still interesting, but it doesn't mean that I know, that I feel like it is um, worth giving away yet.
mm.
Some people give away their art. Some people throw things away. Some people let the art sort of, it has lost its value and is depreciated. But I think that's the joy of good mark making, is that you can always revisit something.
Yeah, giving yourself permission to do that, it has been a giving myself permission to do that is a new thing. Especially because like my art making has been so tied to my business and my livelihood
Mm-hmm.
that there's like things like fair market value, like I don't want to undercut my own collectors. There's so many different things that I'm considering when I think about when a work is finished, you know? And I just pulled this piece out. Let's see if I can flip this.
Fear and Loathing.
Yeah, Fear and Loathing in Miami. That's what this is called. And I did this piece 2013. That was my signature back then with
Mm-hmm.
a date number. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to go back into this. Why don't I
Mm.
reinvestigate Fear and Loathing in California? Or why don't I just add the life that I've lived over the last 11 years, I guess, to the piece and investigate it from a different perspective, being 42.
Mm.
So I'm excited about that. You know, thanks to some of these older artists that gave me permission to like reopen up sentences that I thought I had a period on. You know, that's
Yeah.
one piece I want to work on. But instead of like, I think one thing that like I've been learning here is just to slow down. And the biggest element that I've added to my palette since coming out here is definitely time. Definitely time. I'm using the same paints. I got these crink markers. There's a Sharpie. I used all this shit before, but like I'm adding so much time to each piece now, and it's so fucking difficult to use. It is like the hardest material for me to use.
Mm.
To step away and say like this doesn't need to be finished now. To step away and say you will know better tomorrow.
Mm.
To step away and say you will find rent money somewhere else besides this personal creative endeavor that you need to do for yourself. That time right there is a bitch to use. And to know when to say, okay, it is time. This piece is done for now. That's been really difficult. So if I have to add 11 years to this piece for it to eventually be finished, then that's what it is. And this
Mm.
Erica Badu piece, it's like if I have to make two more of them, I guess that's what it's going to be before I can finally like capture what I needed to from that event that I expressed before.
One of the painters who I often think of when I think of your work, because your work to me, it can be so eclectic and vibrant, is Wasily Kandinsky.
Mm,
Wasily Kandinsky, I think of,
yeah.
because he also he does abstract work. It is very bold. Um, Sometimes his pieces are more cubist than others. Sometimes there's more of a
Mm,
expansive explosion element to it. And what I always get a kick out of is that um, there's I remember I looked at a book. You had a book of Kandinsky's work that I was thumbing through during one of our many times at your house,
yeah.
and I remember thinking at that point, going through each of them, there would be these little essays every now and then in the book that would describe an earlier version of the piece. And just
Mm.
because you made it once doesn't mean that it can't be remade.
Mm.
Like there's clearly a point where you create the initial thought, then you have to develop, is this a thing I will replicate because it's so successful? I've
Mm.
thought of that often with, I had a series of pieces, two series. One series was called Catharsis,
Mm.
and the other series was called Crucial Steps. And they were both, very similar to me, to be the same type of work. But what I really appreciated was that I realized I had the ability to go in and take something that was incredibly emotional for me, and perhaps if I ever wanted to, make them into giclées and then
Mm.
reprint them. So there were, the lead piece. Can you see that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So the lead piece was very emotional to me and was about movement and inner hardships coming out, and there was a lot of this fun difference of gradation, and then as I moved
I
on,
love that kind of like border that you have on these pieces here.
the
I like
fact that
how it
it
kind of
flows.
open. Yeah, it goes
Yeah.
out of it.
The fact, and then the other pieces that I had really did shift in their styles.
Mm.
um, you end up with a real difference of, is it staying within the frame? Is the point of this to appear more geometric, more cubist?
Mm.
Are we trying to come up with uh, new style within each one? And they're all, in this case, this whole series, this Catharsis series, was always based on, um, I drew them literally over some discarded prints that I did of a
Mm.
series called Hands from Africa. Oh, this was the
Mm.
last piece. Whereas this piece was very dark to me, very Batman, so dark. Uh, I had another piece like this one called Jumpers from Crucial Steps. Can you see that?
Mm-hmm.
And this was much more fun to me.
Mm.
Uh, there's jumping frogs and there's a cricket. Can you see them? What I love is that even though this piece, actually, I still have this one. This one did not sell. Well,
There we
what
go.
I just want to say
Build
is
that
it's
in.
so fun to know that because I still have it, it is still
Mm.
within my ability to work on. And I think
Mm.
I want to say thank you, because that reminds me that, every now and then I look back at things and I think, oh, if only I could have, if only I still had
Mm.
these.
Yeah.
And actually, this Crucial Steps series, there were a few different pieces that I'm not sure if, I think I still have a few of them actually. Some of them sold, some of them didn't.
Mm.
I just love that I made these things. It's like a vivid dream
Oh
state
wow, I
of
like that.
me from
I
over
I'm seeing
10
a bird
years
in
ago.
that now.
Yeah, there's a couple birds in this one, I believe. But I just
Wow.
love, there was a process of creating and being unafraid and diving into it and creating,
Yeah.
finding animals, and um, that was a joy that I found that I miss. But I think I'm going to look back at some of these old pieces and maybe pull them back out again. And in this case, also for Crucial Steps, because I'm colorblind, there were some value issues where I didn't realize, because I was thinking of it as, I think when you work in a studio, you have your lighting versus the lighting others see. You've got the initial marks that you think of in your head, and then you've got the end result where the values may not be as strong. You
Mm-hmm.
might want to create more contrast. So I think I might actually consider pulling those out. I miss that.
Cool. That'd be awesome to see what you do with them.
All right. Well, thank you. I haven't looked at these things in so long. How cool. I went and grabbed Extra Life. Tell the dear listener a little bit about the process of creating Extra Life. I have 205 out of 250.
205 out of 250. Awesome.
Yes.
Okay, so yeah, there was 250 made. I guess we were talking about like a lot of this, like expressing a self. That's where it came from. I think I had been doing 15 years of art as a business, and most of my portfolio, I looked back and was what other people had asked me to do. And I didn't have a lot of representations of myself in my past. So that was a big kind of inspiration for me, just to kind of get out and start processing things with my visual language that I've been developing. And I painted for a while, like a few years. And I looked back and I had like a few hundred paintings. And I looked back at the sketchbooks and I had all this writing in there too. It wasn't just the drawings that we were talking about. So that's when I decided to put the book together.
I love one of my favorite things about it. I mean, I think you could have just had a regular book with all of your work, painting wise, but I love how good the poetry is. And especially to the fact that, you know, to some level, I know that you've accompanied each page on one side that has art on it. If there's writing on the other side, there's a connection there. But what I also love is it highlights just the fact that each of these marks, each of the paintings that you're doing, you're creating through the curation process this wider understanding of like, this goes with that. These are the themes that I want to make.
Yeah, there's a story there, but you can kind of also open it up and just maybe appreciate a moment in time as well. It's a lot. There's a lot there, and to kind of unpack it all the way through from start to end, you know, that requires a lot of, I think, the viewer. So I try to make something that would also kind of like, yeah, just flip open to this and kind of take this in today.
Yeah. So I have a question for you. There's one part in the book where you have this triptych.
Yeah, the seduction of power.
Seduction of power, these framed pieces. And one of the things that I love is that throughout the book, your art is presented in different ways. But this is one of those rare cases where it's actually not only presented as more than just one piece at a time, but it's framed. Can you speak a little bit about, you know, the process of putting the book together and making choices like that to sort of break certain pieces out?
Oh, that's such a awesome thing that you noted there, because there are only a couple pieces in there that show a frame, and all those decisions were really intentional for that particular piece. Yeah, so those are, in that way, like you kind of are like full screening the image and really like spreading it to the edge, but sometimes I wanted it to feel like an art piece and really bring you as the viewer back to like, oh yeah, this is a final piece. And with the seduction of power in particular, you know, like I'm thinking about the industry, I'm thinking about commerce, I'm thinking about these finished touches that you put on something before the presentation, you know, in order to kind of get that last little bit out of there. Yeah, here we go. The seduction of power. And I thought that the framing element kind of made it feel like almost like a gallery, like you're in the gallery looking at a piece of art.
I think so. And it's so effective too, because this is an example where there's a point on here that where you're creating a painting over mixed materials, including a piece of cardboard.
Yeah.
And the juxtaposition in that piece to the logo of that Canton factory where you got the cardboard, looks like, to this print of what looks like a moon, you know, this full moon sphere. it really creates this beautiful jump from one side of the page to the other.
Mm.
But when you look back, there are earlier pieces in this where you've created a theme.
Mm-hmm.
So that sometimes it seems like you're really telling a story across many pages,
Right.
creating a wider poem.
In that chapter, it's one of the earlier chapters, and I'm kind of going deep into the early tenets of what like create who I am, or maybe even
Oh,
like the human experience.
19,
So there's
20.
like these colors and shapes that are forming out of abstraction. There's this idea of wisdom and truth. Yeah, there's wisdom and truth that's right by that. One of the
Mm,
other principles I think right after that is love and fear. It's called and the grandest love and fear. Oh, there's wisdom and truth. Yeah. So I think I list like 4 or 5 different kind of like drivers, so to speak, in the human experience that are love and fear, the grandest love and fear, which for me are like the biggest motivating factors probably when I look back at my life. Things that I've
yeah.
done out of love and fear.
Well, I love that your artwork to me is so magnetic because it speaks to so many core values, and you're not trying to do so much that people have to go, where is this coming from?
Mm.
Um, Sometimes I think, some art you just stare at it and you're like, I don't know what to make of this, or I don't know where the starting point is.
Mm.
That's never a question I have with yours, because
Mm.
whether your pieces are more decorative or whether they are more landscapes, whether they are vignettes, whether they are, singular frames, there's always an understanding that, it's like a dreamscape to me, that you're always
Mm.
jumping in. And those values are always one of the most captivating things.
Mm. 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 I guess you're describing the aesthetic of my worldview, which I
Yeah,
appreciate hearing those adjectives.
I just really appreciate how much it's so clear. And one thing that I know I keep giving you compliments for, but I love that you invested in creating an entire, anthology of your work.
Mm.
Can you just speak a bit about what it meant um, to create a proper show of a book? Not
Mm.
everyone has a book of their pieces.
Well, yeah, I think I had to recognize my limitations. I mean, I was an illustration major, so in a lot of ways, I was excited to flex my muscle on the integration of words and images together. But when after that point, like how do you capture the work that I've created? How do you edit it? How do you design it into a book? Those are things that I've had some experience with, but I wanted to bring in professionals for.
Yeah,
And, I had a lot of like help with those aspects to bring it into book form. I mean, I kind of talked about like the first few years when I was making stuff, like that's when I lived extra life, and that was for me. Like I already made that work. I already
mm,
lived it. I processed it. I captured it. I decided to honor it for myself. But like when I said, okay, I'm going to make a book to share this experience because it might help out people that I care about, that's when I decided to bring in other people. That's when I asked Jeff to help me photograph it. That's when I asked Tracy to help me edit it. That's when I asked Billy to help me design it. That's when I asked Uptown Press to help me print it. And those are all people that were right in my circle, right in my city at the time, that I knew I could count on to kind of bring it up with their professionalism to the public, outside of just what I needed for myself, to a point where like other people could access it, read it, and kind of feel the work, even though it's a reproduction, feel the originals. I mean, the book recontextualized a lot of it. Everything has to fit within the foot of the page there.
yeah.
And a
But
lot of those images are up to 10 feet big.
yes, I think one of the things I love the most is that it is clear to me as I look at this that these pieces are all
varied in scale. But what I love is that for me, like there's a point where you have an entire fold out section
Mm.
in the middle of the book, and it is just so cool that you have like, not only does it make you say, you know, are these all their own frames and it's just been combined into one place, but it also says that like all of these pieces together really creates a wider scope, and it doesn't feel overwhelming. Like every page I look at, I'm like, oh my gosh, how cool! I want to dig into this.
Mm.
And
Yeah,
it's just
that
so
fold
cool
out. That
cool.
fold out was, I went extra with the fold out. But that was a trick to make it feel like that extra, like you're actually doing something this whole time. You're getting in this rhythm, like almost this breathing rhythm when you go through a book, right? And that stops you. That's another moment of stopping when you're like actually unfolding. You know, like that's activating a different part of the person that I wanted to like touch, instead of just the intimacy of like under a light looking at a book. I mean, you have to really spread that out, and that goes 4 feet. So, I mean, there are a lot of different moments in there that are trying to engage different people in different ways. Like right in the middle, there's a break with like 2 white pages. There's some people that ask me if I meant to do that, and then there's some people that are really inspired by that. So, you know, Matt made a piece of Matt made a Matt made a piece of music inspired by Extra Life. And I was so excited to hear all about it. He said it was about that middle page. It was about the white pages.
Oh my
Yeah.
god.
Yeah.
Well, you know, I mean, I love that it's just what a editorial break. I appreciate that there's not this isn't a painting that is white. I hate that. I hate that concept. There's a highfalutin thing to contemporary art that drives me insane, which is people trying to read messaging into something that is esoteric and not technically interesting. But I appreciate, as I look through this, just the clear choices of creating an editorial process. All right. So Michael, I've talked a lot. Since you've printed Extra Life, I know you've been selling you've sold the first editions. Do you still have any available for sale?
I do. Yeah, I do still have some of the first edition books left. I think out of the 250 of them, there might be like 70 left, maybe. That's probably where I'm at right now. And I'm just trying to sell them directly to people that reach out to me, because it's such a personal project. I want to know who owns the art. I want to be able to talk to them about it afterwards and see what they connect to, and for sake of all those other reasons that we mentioned before, for sake of collaboration, growth, exploration, communion. I mean, I'm just writing and painting for those reasons anyway. So
it's an extra treat to me, because you're not just it's like a little behind the scenes that you get, is getting to know the artist and getting to follow them over time. And I'm looking forward to seeing what your next era looks like.
Yeah, I hope things keep changing. I mean,
you will.
That's the point. I mean, for me at least, you know, the evolution is important. So
thank you, Michael, for joining us.
It's great hanging out.